Ronald Reagan, the 40th President of the United States, remains a figure of enduring fascination and debate. His influence on American politics and culture is still felt today, decades after he left office. His presidency, spanning from 1981 to 1989, was a pivotal period in American history, marked by significant economic shifts, escalating Cold War tensions, and evolving social landscapes. The era saw the rise of Reaganomics, a set of economic policies that aim to reduce government spending, taxes, and regulation, which proponents argue revitalized the American economy. Reagan's legacy, however, remains a subject of intense scrutiny, with historians and political commentators grappling to define his true impact on the nation. Some view him as a visionary leader who restored American confidence and strength, while others criticize his administration for policies that they believe exacerbated social and economic inequalities. Was he a transformative leader who ushered in an era of American prosperity and global dominance, or did his policies sow the seeds of economic inequality and social division that continue to plague the country today? The debate is ongoing, with each side presenting compelling arguments and evidence to support their views. This essay delves into the complexities of Reagan's presidency, examining his defining policies, their consequences, and his lasting influence on American society. We will explore the key initiatives of his administration, such as tax cuts, deregulation, and a strong anti-communist stance, and assess their long-term effects. Reagan's journey to the White House was as improbable as it was remarkable. Born in a small town in Illinois, he initially pursued a career in entertainment, becoming a well-known Hollywood actor before transitioning to politics. A former Hollywood actor, he rose to political prominence through his charisma, conservative ideology, and ability to connect with ordinary Americans. His communication skills earned him the nickname, the Great Communicator, and he used his platform to advocate for a vision of America rooted in traditional values and free market principles. His election in 1980, amidst a backdrop of economic stagnation and national malaise, signaled a yearning for change and a return to traditional values. Reagan's message of hope and renewal resonated with many Americans who were disillusioned with the state of the nation. Reagan's presidency, however, would prove to be far from conventional, as he embarked on a path that would redefine the role of government, reshape the global order, and leave an indelible mark on the American psyche. His foreign policy, particularly his aggressive stance against the Soviet Union, played a crucial role in the eventual end of the Cold War, while his domestic policies continue to influence political discourse to this day. At the heart of Reagan's domestic agenda lay a radical economic program that came to be known as Reaganomics. This program was not just a set of policies, but a fundamental shift in the way the American economy was to be managed and perceived. This supply-side approach, a stark departure from the Keynesian policies of his predecessors, was premised on the belief that tax cuts for businesses and the wealthy would stimulate investment, create jobs, and ultimately benefit all Americans through a process known as trickle-down economics. The idea was that by reducing the tax burden on the most productive members of society, their increased economic activity would trickle down to the rest of the population, leading to overall economic growth and prosperity. Reagan's economic team, led by Treasury Secretary Ronald Reagan, argued that reducing the size and scope of government was essential to unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit and restoring economic growth. They believed that government intervention often stifled innovation, and that a freer market would lead to more efficient and dynamic economic outcomes. Reagan's economic policies, implemented amidst a severe recession, had an immediate and dramatic impact on the American economy. The early 1980s were marked by high unemployment and stagnant growth, but the administration's aggressive tax cuts and deregulation efforts began to show results. The economy started to recover, and by the mid-1980s, the United States was experiencing robust economic growth. Inflation, which had soared to double digits under President Jimmy Carter, was brought under control through a combination of tax cuts, spending cuts, and tight monetary policy by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, under Chairman Paul Volcker, played a crucial role in this process by raising interest rates to curb inflation, a move that was initially painful but ultimately successful in stabilizing prices. The stock market, a key indicator of investor confidence, surged to new heights. as businesses and individuals alike embraced the new era of economic optimism. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, which had languished in the 1970s, began a historic climb, reflecting the renewed confidence in the American economy. This surge in the stock market was not just a sign of investor sentiment but also a driver of wealth creation, as millions of Americans saw their investments grow. However, the true legacy of Reaganomics remains a subject of intense debate, with proponents pointing to the economic expansion of the 1980s as evidence of its success, while critics argue that it exacerbated income inequality and laid the groundwork for future financial crises. Supporters claim that the policies led to a period of unprecedented economic growth and innovation, while detractors highlight the growing disparity between the rich and the poor and the long-term consequences of deregulation and tax cuts. The debate over Reaganomics continues to shape discussions about economic policy and the role of government in the economy to this day. The central tenet of Reaganomics, the notion that tax cuts for the wealthy would trickle down to benefit all Americans, proved to be highly controversial. Proponents argued that by reducing the tax burden on businesses and high-income earners, the government would unleash a wave of investment and job creation that would lift all boats. They pointed to the economic recovery of the mid-1980s, characterized by sustained GDP growth, low unemployment, and low inflation, as evidence that Reaganomics had worked. Critics, however, countered that the benefits of Reaganomics were far from evenly distributed. They argued that the tax cuts disproportionately benefited the wealthy, while doing little to improve the lives of working-class Americans. Indeed, the gap between the rich and poor widened significantly during the 1980s, a trend that has continued in the decades since. Moreover, critics argued that Reagan's deregulation of the financial industry, coupled with his massive military spending, led to soaring budget deficits and laid the groundwork for the financial crises of the 21st century. While Reagan's domestic policies were reshaping the American economy, his foreign policy was equally transformative, focusing on a global stage. His primary objective was to confront the Soviet Union head-on and secure a decisive victory in the Cold War, a conflict that had dominated international relations for decades. Reagan, unlike many of his predecessors, viewed the Soviet Union not merely as a rival to be contained through traditional diplomatic means, but as an evil empire that posed an existential threat to the United States and its allies. This stark moral framing of the conflict was a departure from previous administrations. To counter this perceived threat, Reagan embarked on a massive military buildup, increasing defense spending to unprecedented levels. This included not just conventional forces but also a significant investment in advanced technology. He pushed for the development of new weapons systems, aiming to outpace the Soviet Union in the arms race. One of the most ambitious projects was the Strategic Defense Initiative, derisively dubbed Star Wars by critics, which aimed to create a missile defense system that could render Soviet nuclear missiles obsolete. This initiative was both a technological challenge and a strategic gambit, intended to pressure the Soviet economy. Reagan's confrontational approach to the Soviet Union initially heightened Cold War tensions, leading to a period of increased global anxiety. He provided substantial support to anti-communist movements in Afghanistan, seeing it as a critical front in the struggle against Soviet expansion. Similarly, in Nicaragua and other regions, Reagan's administration funneled aid to groups fighting against Soviet-backed governments, arguing that the United States had a moral obligation to roll back Soviet influence wherever it appeared. This policy was controversial but underscored his commitment to a global anti-communist stance. In Europe, Reagan deployed Pershing II missiles, a move that further escalated the nuclear arms race and sparked widespread protests. This deployment was part of a broader strategy to maintain pressure on the Soviet Union and demonstrate American resolve. However, Reagan's tough stance was balanced by his personal charm and diplomatic skills, which allowed him to build a rapport with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. Their meetings were pivotal in reducing tensions. This relationship ultimately paved the way for a thaw in relations, leading to significant arms reduction treaties and a gradual easing of Cold War hostilities. The culmination of these efforts was the eventual end of the Cold War, symbolized by the fall of the Berlin Wall and the dissolution of the Soviet Union, marking a new era in global politics.